Yes, we know who we are.
Good to go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting for October. Great to see you all. Let's call this meeting to order. And we'll start with our roll call. So I am the Vice Chair, Dylan McDowell. Our Chair, Keith Norris, is absent today. We'll go through the list here. Alan Alexander. Here. Mauricio Flores is absent. Zachary Hammerly.
Here.
All right. Alan Holland, absent today. Joan Lloyd. Here. And Debbie Miller. Here. Perfect. Great to see you all in person. We have a full agenda today, a master plan to talk about and several other things. So got a full time and excited to jump right in. We'll start with the approval of minutes from our September 12th meeting. Are there any comments, edits, or suggestions on the minutes or a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Move to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. The minutes are approved. Public comment, I see nothing written down, just verifying, okay, no public comment for us today. And then our council liaison update, we are going to save a little space later. Councilor Varney is going to be late from another meeting, so she may join us. One of those, never sure.
I don't know why I thought 1:30.
So she may be joining us later, in which case we'll give her a chance to speak if she has updates to share with us. But for now, we can keep going right into our board item presentation. So we have three main things today: Fairview Park Master Plan, Capital Improvement Plan update, and then talking about the comprehensive plan. So big planning day. And we will jump right in with Fairview Park Master Plan revisit and refinement. So Rob, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair McDowell and members. It's nice to see you today. I'm really pleased to have this proposed update to the Fairview Park Master Plan here today for you to consider. Today, we're looking for your feedback and ultimately, hopefully, your endorsement as this plan moves forward to City Council for approval. And again, this is a update of a plan that was developed in 2016. And as you will hear in a moment, a lot has changed in the surrounding neighborhood and a lot has changed in terms of the way people use parks in the past few years. So I really am happy that we did this project, and I really think the product is a much better product than we had to begin with. So without any further delay, I'm going to invite the consultant team up. We have Larry Gilbert is going to come up, and I'll have Larry, can you introduce the rest of the project team?
Sure.
Or who's going to go first?
Well, let's
Okay.
go with Liz goes first. I
Okay.
think she's the project manager
Awesome.
and also a landscape architect.
Awesome.
Want to bring up this?
Absolutely.
We all.
We're all standing now. All right, thank you for having us today. We're really excited to be here. My name is Elizabeth Avil. I'm a landscape architect and project manager at Cameron McCarthy. We are a planning and design firm based in Eugene with offices in Portland and Bend as well. We do a variety of projects and services ranging from planning and design, but we do have a lot of expertise in park projects. Larry Gilbert.
Larry Gilbert, principal landscape architect, Cameron McCarthy. I'm the oldest member of the firm, as you can tell. Gray beard, but this is an exciting project for me, especially, and so very thankful and appreciative of having the opportunity to help design this park for Salem.
And I'm Grace Graham. I'm a designer with Cameron McCarthy, a recent grad of the landscape architecture master's program at U of O.
And I'm sorry, just real quick. And also, some of you members may not, this is Ray Joseph. He's our senior parks planner. He doesn't attend SPRAD regularly, so I just want to introduce him. He's another key member of this team. We've all been working collaboratively on this project. Sorry about that.
No, it's perfect. Let's see, is it all right if I ask for the next slide? We have covered the bulk of our team, but I do want to mention Colin MacArthur is a principal planner in our office and worked on this project, as well as Victor Garcia, a designer in our office. They're not here today, but have been involved in this entire process. Next slide, please. All right, so today we're gonna give an overview of the Fairview Park project. We're gonna take you through from the initial phases of, understanding the site and the current conditions all the way up through the future vision and design for the project. Next slide. Oh, and we'll have a Q&A and discussion too, obviously. All right, so I want to walk you through the timeline for the project. So we started this current project in fall of 2023. That involved a site visit and some site analysis, also reviewing extensive documents of the project. Rob mentioned there's been prior work here and a lot of redevelopment over time. So there's a lot to sift through in the beginning. We also began public involvement at that point. That continued through winter of 2024. And at that point, we also began initial design. In the spring, we revisited the community and conducted more public involvement, interviews and events, as well as online surveys. And then this summer, we went back to the design, refined it based on what we heard, and also collaborated on a phasing approach for the project. And then this fall, we're working currently on the draft report. Next slide, please. Okay, so this, the site of the park, like many places, has extensive history. It does sit on Calpullia land. In the 19th century, the Calpullia were forcibly removed to the Oregon coast. In the early 20th century, the state of Oregon opened and operated a facility on the site that was for, it housed individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That facility was part of about 275-acre campus. In the late 1900s, there were a series of lawsuits over human rights violations that happened at that facility. Those lawsuits eventually prompted the closure of that facility. And then in the early 2000s, Sustainable Fairview Associates purchased the entire campus, then moved forward with subdividing it and preparing redevelopment plans. As Rob mentioned, development has occurred over time. On this specific park site, which is only about 28 acres of that whole campus, buildings have been demolished and removed over time. And then there has been planning work for this site in more recent history. And then most recently is our current project. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm gonna let Larry speak to some existing conditions.
When we visited this site with Rob and Ray, it's been a little over a year ago. There were a few things that really, took me aback for this site. Significant old growth trees that are existing on this site. There are some trees that are pre-settler trees on this part of the campus. But old growth, Doug fir, there's some Oregon white oaks, huge stands of giant sequoia, all kind of grouped together, kind of framing how the old campus was evolved back in 1908 with the first building. But the topography was also something really interesting as well. Can you go to the next slide? And so what's really interesting about this site is there's so much elevation change on the site. The highest, I'll point out here, the highest points of the site are located at this pedestrian crossing off of Lindbergh. And then there's another crossing up here, but these are the two highest points of the site. So when you're standing there and you can kind of see these view arrows, you can really take on the entire park from these vantage points and really get a kind of sense of the whole place. But if you can kind of see from the topography, if you can really well, but all of the trees that are located in here, these are all those existing old growth trees. And we really wanted to celebrate that and kind of make sure that the history of the landscape history of this place was preserved and protected as much as possible. And the topography itself, if you stand here and the low point is on Old Strong Road, in fact, this pathway here is the road that they took from Old Strong to get to the original house, the first building that's located right here. But the elevation change between here and here is over 50 feet of elevation change. So there's a lot of topography that we have to figure out how to move people through the site and make it universally accessible. And you can kind of see this, the high ground is along this edge and everything slopes kind of into a valley that's located here with the low point being kind of right at this point. But so our main kind of guideline in terms of the design was to look at that topography, to look how people view and also access the site at the main crossings. And how do we locate components of the park, the program elements of the park within that topography and still preserve and maintain all of the existing trees and make those pathways work. Because the primary tenant, because given that its former use as kind of a hospital or a place for people with disabilities, we wanted to ensure that this park design was universally and totally accessible for everyone, both physically, mentally, spiritually. And that was kind of like one of the main tenets we used in driving our design forward.
Next slide. So I'm going to talk a bit about our public involvement process. Our design, which we'll kind of present shortly, was informed by a really strategic and intentional approach to community involvement. We began last fall by identifying goals as a project team for conducting outreach, why we're doing it, what we want to learn, and then thinking critically about who we want to hear from and how to engage them most effectively and appropriately. So we wanted to understand the needs and priorities of the Salem community as it relates to this outdoor space, particularly local residents, so neighbors surrounding the park, and populations impacted by systems of exclusion. We really wanted to advance equity in our engagement process and ensure that we're hearing from folks who have been or will be impacted by this project. So over the past year, we've spoken with local neighbors, youth from Salem's Latinx community through William Academy, older adults through Salem's Center 50+, former residents of the Fairview Training Center, and other members of the community with developmental disabilities. As Larry mentioned, it was especially important for us to hear from them directly, given the history of this site and our desire to sort of change the narrative and make this a really welcoming and inclusive and accessible space universally. So our methods for engagement included open house style pop-up events, a workshop. We participated in an existing festival. We'll get more into those specifics shortly. Individual interviews and digital surveys. So we really had a wide range of activities that were all kind of targeted towards our goals for that particular phase of the project or that particular group that we wanted to hear from. You can go to the next slide. So our first phase of public involvement last fall included a digital survey, one-on-one interviews. We did a pop-up event at the park, which was targeted towards neighbors, and a workshop with youth from Willamette Academy. And for this first phase, our goal was to understand broadly what makes people feel welcome and safe in public spaces generally, and what they envision for this space and this park specifically. So key themes that we heard from that first phase included desires for preserving and restoring natural areas, ensuring universal accessibility, opportunities for passive recreation, so trails, walking paths, benches, that sort of thing. Space for community programming, flexible space that could host kind of a variety of programs and events. And informational and wayfinding signage is another thing that people wanted to see given the size of this site and kind of the different access points it has. So I think Larry is now going to talk a little bit about the preliminary concepts that came from this first phase.
Thank you. Next slide, Rob. So we developed two concepts. We really developed about 4 or 5 concepts. But we ended up with 2 concepts that included park components that we heard what the community's desire was in terms of the kinds of activities, the kinds of facilities that might be within this park. And that's what's arrayed on these diagrams. But it turned out, and there were some things that were included in one concept that were not included in the other. And some of the ideas for some of these park elements were brought to us by Rob and Ray. One of the elements was a dog park, that they want to have a dog park on this site. There was some funding available for that. It seemed like an important use, but siting a dog park within a community park of this size is kind of a challenge. You gotta figure out, well, where does it want to be? And also a pickleball court. That was another one that was kind of, we heard, obviously there's a lot of, desire and increased activity and interest of having pickleball, and then people are converting tennis courts into pickleball and kind of taking care of, I guess, maybe people in my generation that can't play tennis anymore and want to pick up pickleball. But anyway, that was just another element. There also wanted to be an interpretive area or some place that spoke to the history and informed the users about the place and what its history was and what it meant to people. So there was a kind of an interpretive area, a large gathering area, but also traditional park areas that might be kind of active, big grass playfields. A large playground, was another element. So all of these kind of components, these pieces had to be sized appropriately to fit the site. The overall park space is about 28 acres, out of the 300 plus that was the original campus. So this is the last, remnant of that. We also, had Pringle Creek, or a tributary of Pringle Creek, kind of along the north edge that kind of is along the north portion of Old Strong Road. But we did these, they're more like diagrams than anything. But what was critical is kind of identifying the size of each one of these elements, these park elements, and kind of locate them where they might appropriately be. As an example, we have, developed neighborhood here and more developed neighborhood here. So all this has expanded, kind of greatly, over the, as this, site has developed. And determining where these park elements, might fit within the site and be accessed, by the neighborhoods, and also buffered by the neighborhoods. Thinking about, do we really want the pickleball court somewhere along the street here? Or does it need to be in some place that maybe is farther away? It might be a use that people on a more regional level, someone who's outside of the neighborhood might want to come and visit to play pickleball in. So providing some kind of parking for them was an issue, and kind of figure out, well, where would pickleball, kind of be located? Where would, where would the dog park be located relative to the neighborhood? Do they want it right out front center? Or is it someplace that's more on kind of one of the edges? So we took all of those things into consideration and kind of did two concepts where we took all those major components and placed them within the park that seemed appropriate in terms of having enough separation, enough identity for each one so they can kind of stand on their own and feel like their own place, but still be connected to the greater part of the whole park. So we laid these pieces out, and you'll see the other diagram as well. But the critical thing that we thought about, and it's really the only thing that's on this drawing that you can kind of carry through, was one, all of the trees that are shown on this drawing, those are all existing trees within the campus. We didn't look at any new trees. We just wanted to know, where are the existing trees and what are the elevations around those trees? Because we need to have our pathways, if they go by them, they need to match grade there. We can't do a lot of cutting or a lot of filling around those trees. We need to kind of match those grades. But again, as I said, we've got 50 feet of elevation change between here and here. How do you get people down to here on a universal path where, when we talk about universal access, no pathway can be steeper than a 20-to-1 slope? That means, 1 in 20 feet, 1 foot of elevation change in 20 feet of length. So if you're going 50 feet, times, that distance, that's quite a few feet of pathway that you need to have that accessible pathway. And that's why you can't really see it in here, but there are red lines in here. Those are contour intervals that identify, the distance between each one of these. In other words, this dog park down to this playground, there's about 25 to 30 feet of elevation change. So that means, for 20 feet, we would need, 40 feet or 400 feet of distance, over that, the length of that path. If that's, I'm probably not trying to get over your head, but I'm just trying to explain that, that was the engineering behind this whole thing. It was a problem, a simple problem of figuring out how long do the paths need to be to get from point A to point B without disturbing trees and landing, in these areas. And that was what was really driving it. Can we go to the next one? And we can go back and forth, but this plan showed the dog park located in the corner. This intersection of Lindbergh and Strong Road was always identified as a community center space or someplace that would have, a market space or some kind of like a public building kind of located within that. But, dog park along here, community garden located up here. There were plans and what we heard from the community that a natural park environment, kind of native landscapes, trails, more passive kind of recreation was really important to them. And that's kind of like what this plan shows. Because what we identified was there was an opportunity, and we heard this from Rob and Ray too. All of the stormwater that is collected from most of this neighborhood travels in a 36-inch pipe that gets collected right here. And that pipe goes all the way through the site and discharges into Pringle Creek about right here. So talking to Rob and Ray, what is the possibility of intercepting that stormwater at that point, abandoning that 36-inch line and letting all that stormwater flow from here, as well as whatever stormwater we create in these things, and turn it into a swale or a creek or some kind of a natural open drainage way that helps do water quality, but also creates a more natural environment from what we had. I think when the communities in our first program saw this plan, they really, liked that. And they said, well, that's our preferred option. But obviously, there are other melons. If you go back, can you go back to the other one? So the previous, the one we just saw, doesn't have the pickleball court in it, and it doesn't have a community garden in the other one. So we're trying to figure out, well, what were the ones that were most important? But it seemed like pickleball court was one of the ones. And given its proximity, that's why it kind of ended up where it is. It's at the low point of the site. It's kind of nestled and protected around. It's not really part of this part of the park. It's kind of unto itself. It creates a lot. If you've gone to a pickleball court, or it's a lot of noise, so those ball bouncing back and forth. So we didn't want to necessarily be it so close in proximity to other uses that it would, make people feel uncomfortable. Same thing with a dog park. We felt like, well, probably a dog park along either Strong Road or Lindbergh didn't make sense, but with buffering up against this multi-family housing here, putting a dog park, along there seemed to make the right sense. And we also felt like putting a playground, which would also include restrooms, shelters, kind of all the major kind of park amenities for the park, would be kind of located in the center of the park. And then a network of pathways would be connected to it. And then amphitheater was another one that people identified and felt that was a really good opportunity. And given that this is the historic location of the original building of the site, that's where we identified to have the interpretive area. But having an active play field right in the corner wasn't very agreeable, to a lot of the users in the community as well. So the final plan that we came up with, you can go to the next one again, Rob, is kind of a hybrid it's kind of a mix and match. On the previous one, we kept, the interpretive area, pickleball court, but we still wanted to keep this idea of treating stormwater and having an open drainage and a treatment area as well. So the final plan that we came up with is kind of a hybrid of both options, where we've taken hopefully the best of each and kind of blended them together. So we can go on. We'll have questions afterwards, and we can kind of fill in more, but we keep this thing, moving.
So going back to the public involvement, once we kind of developed these two different preliminary concepts from that first phase of outreach, we then brought those back to the community, many of the same folks we had talked to in the first phase, plus some additional, and asked them to respond to those elements. The program elements we were featuring, but also their location, their sizing, all of the things that Larry just mentioned. So we conducted a second digital survey. We did more one-on-one interviews. We hosted an open house event for neighbors at Pringle Hall. We also participated in Shangri-La's Accessible Spring Festival, which was a drive-through event for individuals with developmental disabilities and their families. And at that event, we had over 200 people. So we were able to really hear directly from folks who are, we want to be using this space, with these different concepts we were presenting, what they responded to and what really resonated with them. So some broad takeaways. Overall, there was a preference for concept B because of its, that's the one with the natural kind of drainage swale. People really responded to that and responded to more expansive natural area instead of maybe some of the soccer field, more sports facilities. However, there was still a desire for some active recreation. As Larry mentioned, pickleball was a big thing. We also heard from youth in particular and the community with developmental disabilities. Basketball was very popular and playgrounds, play areas. And then we also in this second phase of outreach asked about priorities and phasing. We wanted to know, if all of these things can't be built at once, what do you want to see first? And some of those high priority items that came back were the dog park, paths. People really just want to be able to move through the space, slowly through some sort of network of paths, walking their dogs, that sort of thing. And then play was a big one. With all the residential development happening around the park, there's families, kids. People want a place to go and a place to play and kind of have this multi-generational, walking paths and benches for some, active play for others. And then also, as Larry mentioned, there was broad support for the concept of some sort of community space, indoor community building or market plaza of some kind, a community place at that kind of intersection as part of this village center concept. I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, next slide, please. So we have collaborated on a vision for the park with Rob and Ray, using both data from our background research, but also the public involvement. And to kind of pick up with what Grace was describing, the vision for the park really tries to bring together and balance both the environmental sustainability component, being inclusive of everyone and offering a variety of amenities, but then also connecting those really well so that they're accessible. I might read the vision statement for folks listening on YouTube, but it says, our vision for Fairview Park is to establish a community space that fosters inclusivity, environmental sustainability, and cultural connection by conserving mature trees, minimizing landscape disruption, and offering a variety of recreation options. The park will be a place for all, providing tranquility and opportunities for active engagement. Next slide, please. So part of this vision, we wanted to be really specific about some of the principles behind it. As we refined into the design for the project, we just wanted to be really specific that this design is inclusive and has universal accessibility, that the importance of having a cultural connection would be continued through to that final design. And then we talked about respecting the existing environment, and then the aspect of it just being a really important place for the community and becoming a community hub. Next slide. So I want to walk through the final design of the Fairview Park. First of all, I'll just mention that we've kind of combined, like Larry mentioned, elements from both concepts, and really incorporated what we heard was important from the community. But we are balancing that with, what's appropriate on the site, especially with topography and also being able to provide universal access to these amenities. I'll just describe a few different like landscape types that you'll see in different areas. So we do have creek restoration. I'm like way too short to point on this.
Can you zoom in at all?
Oh, no, it's all good. So we have creek restoration along Pringle Creek, or the West Middle Fork. You'll see plant beds throughout the design as well as irrigated lawn. But there is a significant amount of the site that's natural prairie, or native prairie, and is more of a natural area. And then there's significant existing trees we're preserving, and you'll see bark mulch kind of, around that area and kind of as the treatment for that. So I'll walk through the different amenities. I'll kind of start on this Lindbergh side. Like Larry mentioned, this northwest corner is significant in terms of the facility, the training facility that was there. So we've included and kept that interpretive space in that area. Adjacent to that is nature play. All of the concrete paths you're seeing on the plan are graded for universal accessibility. So just kind of keeping that in mind as we move through this. Along Lindbergh, we do have a multi-purpose lawn. You'll see another one over here along Strong Road. But this is where we kind of move to kind of the core of the park, which is some really significant play areas that are supported by picnic shelters and restroom. That also is supported by a smaller parking lot. This was something we heard from public involvement. It's really important for people to have just access to amenities within a short distance from parking for those that need it. That space is also adjacent to a basketball court in that core area. Moving down to the intersection of Lindbergh and Strong Road, we have kept or carried through that concept of the community hub. So right now it's shown as a structure, but also a significant outdoor space and accompanied by community garden. There's also stormwater facility there because we're anticipating that need. So as we move up along Strong Road, we have that lawn area that I mentioned. You'll see there's a connection to both parking, a smaller play or art installation, and then a significantly sized dog park, which is fenced and has separate areas for different size dogs. And then there would also be some seating and shelters associated with that. And then I do want to talk about the kind of the core center of the park as you go towards Old Strong Road. I think we mentioned we're accommodating stormwater on site with the use of a naturalized drainage swale that kind of follows some existing topography. So we're trying to work with the landscape there to handle stormwater. And then as you move towards Old Strong Road, we're collecting that with a rain garden. And then adjacent to that, you'll see pickleball courts with a restroom and shelter, as well as an amphitheater or larger event space. It's sized for about 250 people, but it's also, we're very thoughtfully trying to situate that amongst some like existing very large trees that are significant and just have a very special quality on the site. I'll just chat briefly about Old Strong Road. We have recognized this intersection here with Reed Road. We have a monument sign there, and then there would be vehicular access to this parking area adjacent to the pickleball courts. And then as that continues, we've transitioned that to just multi-use path, which does connect to maintenance yard for support for the park, but also surrounding facilities. I think, good, can you next slide there? I think, do you want me to review it or?
Oh, I can
Okay.
kind of review it. It's kind of, maybe it's hard to tell from the slider, but I mean, this is drawn kind of three-dimensionally. There's a surface that Grace did most of the drawings she's the one that created all of these, drawings. But you can kind of get a sense of the topography of the place. And then you can see, in reality, in our drawing, the amphitheater, which is located here, is probably about 15 or 20 feet above the pickleball court. In fact, you won't even see the pickleball court from the amphitheater. There's gonna be a berm through this area, plus we would have vegetation to screen it. And just like, the dog park kind of sits up on the high point in here, and it kind of looks down into that, the creek drainage and the amphitheater theater. But what's really unique about this, because of the way it kind of sits as a bowl with the high points around the perimeters, and then everything steps down to this, it really helps to separate and identify each of these, major park components as their own space and their own entity. It's nothing kind of blends together, and the topography helps, separate it, which is, really quite unique. And then if you see in plan view, obviously you can see in those big brown areas in the plan view, these are all those existing, conifers that are really significant on site. These are the giant sequoias, Doug fir, more Doug fir. There's some beautiful, Oregon white oaks that are on the end here. And some of these trees are, like I said, they're pre-settler trees. These are before anybody, came onto this land except the Calapuyas. So, very, beautiful, significant landscape that could become a real jewel for the city, and certainly appreciated by all of its neighbors and the community at large. And then,
Next,
did you want to speak to anything else?
I'll let you.
Sure, yeah, we just have a couple other kind of perspective views to just highlight different areas of the park. This is looking at the dog park here, looking north towards Strong Road. There's like a little inset map here at the top of each of these that kind of shows you, I suppose the little talking pieces in front of that, but kind of shows you the view that we're looking at in reference to the whole park property. So here you can see we have this dog park. It's about 2 acres in size. About 2/3 of that is for larger dogs, and then smaller dogs kind of separated. And then this pathway all the way down to the pickleball, which is about 35 feet lower than the dog park. This is all graded to remain accessible. So it's a long path, but still, gets us down to that other part of the park without becoming too steep. So anyone can, traverse that path. And then this kind of also just highlights where this kind of low drainage is. It's a little bit hard to tell, but we do kind of have these contour lines showing. So the dog park kind of slopes down, the play also kind of slopes down here. So this is a low point that starts here and then keeps going lower all the way down to this rain garden, which is set actually a little bit lower than this vegetated berm. And then there's a wall there, and below that wall we're matching existing grade on Old Strong Road for this pickleball court. And again, we're kind of highlighting here, the amphitheater is sort of tucked away onto the other side of those trees. And there's this larger berm here where there's an existing deodar cedar. And the pickleball and amphitheater are very much separated by the existing topography there.
There's a big London plane tree too. I wanted to point out too, and it's kind of, you could look at it in plan view, but this junction right there, this is where the creek emerges. If you can imagine, there's a 30-inch storm line that runs kind of diagonally and stops right here. And then this is where it transitions from at this point to the 36-inch that takes us kind of like to the creek. This is where we expose it. And there will be, if you were standing here, it would be like a little overlook. There would be a rail there when you would look down, and the creek emerging from underneath that is about 7 feet below what you're standing on. And then so this all this stormwater comes boiling out from underneath this creek, and it emerges there. And then it meanders back and forth through here. There could be stone wares and things that would create little waterfalls or riffles in it, so it steps down. But, you know, again, we're dropping, 25 or 30 feet from where this is to the rain garden here. So you can really get kind of a dramatic effect of this open drainage and creek with wares and little, waterfalls, if you will, along that creek drainage. So really a unique and interesting component to the park.
Next slide, please. Thanks, Rob. So I do want to share a little bit about this last view that we have for you today. This is of that central play area. We wanted to share this just because we see it as like being a really day-to-day hub for the community. Play was really important, and then that's another aspect of the design that we see accessibility being incorporated into the project, both with surfaces and equipment. But that play area has shelters and a restroom and the basketball. And again, it's kind of situated between the Lindbergh and the parking lot, and then kind of that drainage swell they're speaking to. So we collaborated on phasing for the project. Phase one includes a number of different areas on the site, and as well as paths that connect them. So I'll just review kind of that, and then also some of the alternate phases. For phase one, we're including the dog park, the entire dog park and the associated parking. We also have the lawn along Strong Road, accompanying paths that take you all the way to the central play and kind of activity area with the shelters and restroom. We're including that as well as the parking that's along Lindbergh that supports that those amenities. And also we've included some of these paths that lead back to Lindbergh, but also down to Old Strong Road. This is we heard from people, passive recreation and walking and trails are really important. So, that is addressing that interest in the community in phase one. Several of the alternates show we have one alternate towards Old Strong Road, focuses on the pickleball and those amenities. A second alternate is including the interpretive space towards Lindbergh. And then a third alternate looks at including the multi-purpose lawn and just landscape improvements along Lindbergh. There's more, but we can answer questions specifically about that. Next slide, please. I think that's everything. Thank you. I know there's a lot of information, so thank you for listening to all.
Just
Yeah,
question.
do we want to?
Yeah, I think that'd be great to go into some discussion and questions. I have some questions about the kind of cost piece of it, which Rob might be more questions for you, but we can start with some of the design questions too and kind of how this, but I mean, first off, I feel like this is one of the most detailed master plans we've had and that I've seen in terms of, I feel like kind of getting riverfront park vibes in that sense. It feels like it hasn't been that detailed for a while.
Yes.
It's impressive.
So that was intentional. This is, we call this a refinement of the master plan as well as an update to it. So it is at a level of detail we would not typically go into.
Yeah.
And part of that is so that we could get a better sense of the cost management aspects of this. And I will say that we are working on a professionally prepared cost estimate, and it is coming in probably next day or two. Friday. And so that's when the sticker shock will come. But there is approximately $4.5 million in the capital outlay for a phase one at this point. And the intention of the way that the phase one plan has been set up with the alternates is that we're hoping that there's a situation where we can like seek out a grant that would be willing to fund one of those specific components. That's the idea there. And I'll just also mention.
Clarify that, sorry.
Yeah.
So I see you said the 4.5 in here as well. So that 4.5 is essentially in hand between the combination of sources with the bond and everything.
Yes, it's not, Tammy can correct, is good to so it's not like cash that's available today, but it is
It's
forecasted
accounted for,
to be
yes.
available for this project.
Okay,
That's right.
Perfect.
Excuse me, I think you've done a very thorough, wonderful job, all working together. It's beautiful. And, you know, the public involvement, lots of responses to the survey and everything, which is really exciting. I want to, I'm sure you're putting in new trees. Looked like you had a lot of new trees.
Yes.
And I was just curious about how many and what kinds. Seeing as, you know, the global warming, I mean, did you consult also with Mylan? You know, are there trees, I mean, native trees now, some of them are going away? Yeah, take it away.
Well, we haven't really gotten into the detail, I mean, at this higher level. But definitely, if we were going to create kind of a natural landscape, we're gonna wanna use native or native analogs or trees that can grow and adapt in kind of our environments. We're additionally thinking that all those lighter green areas that are in there, those would be non-irrigated landscapes. For the most part, it's gonna be kind of prairie grass or native grasses. There might be trees in there as well, but they would be like alders, big leaf maple, maybe some vine maple, whatever, you know, we think's appropriate. A lot of, some conifers as well. But we don't wanna, you know, diminish the spectacularness, if that's a word, of those existing trees.
Right.
They really took my breath away. When I walked through that landscape the first time, I could not believe that we had an opportunity to work around trees of this significance, you know, that really kind of capture, you know, a feeling of place there. That's unlike, you know, a lot of parks that I've worked on and encountered over my career. So, you know, we will plant more trees. Obviously, you can see this drawing. The brown areas are where all the native trees are, with the exception of a few isolated areas. But again, here, like, there's a conifer right here, a big conifer, and there's another big conifer here, and there's an existing pathway that works its way through there that the neighborhood uses now that runs right through that space. And we wanted to you know, celebrate those trees. It's some big Doug firs that you can come up to. There could be a bench or a place that you can kind of stop and pause in there. And there are those opportunities throughout this whole site. So beautiful Oregon white oak right here, big one, right at that end. But again,
And I think just to like come back to your question too, like we're showing a number of proposed trees to
Yes.
kind of build out the park.
Right.
And then our intent or best practice would be to include a variety of species that can respond to climate change over time, or just other, you know, impacts, things that may come up, that could just make the trees that are proposed more resilient over time.
And I would say the city's urban forester has certainly been involved in this project. And he loves the plan. He's especially excited about the decisions we're making to do large mulch areas under the significant trees. That he really likes that idea.
Nice.
so we're not gonna irrigate any of these areas where those trees are. They're used to not having irrigation. We put water in there now and they're probably gonna get gout or something. So we don't want them to be damaged by that. So that's significant areas where it's just trees and brown mulch, and that's all you have there. It'll be pretty spectacular.
It's wonderful, and I'm so
Yeah.
glad you're preserving them,
Yeah.
but someday they will go away,
Oh,
and that's what
absolutely. And yeah.
you know,
I
wondering, hoping that some other ones will grow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we have a question from Alan.
I just have to, I really like that concept. I'm curious about your swale and your rain garden. Will those be classified as wetlands?
I'm not sure jurisdiction. We do have a couple of wetlands on the site right now that would be considered wetlands. I think it's where either a basement in one of the foundations or where the swimming pool used to be. You know, there's water that has been collecting there for a few years, and those.
The reason I'm asking, I'm more familiar with the development up in the industrial areas, and the city had labored for years looking for mitigation acreage to offset some of the additional development. I was wondering if the swale and the rain garden would increase their
Ability, like,
their wetlands mitigation capacity.
so for have credits or square
Yeah,
footage
yeah.
that you can apply to, you know, an area where you need to fill a wetland or remove a wetland in an area and get a credit
If
for
in
it.
fact they did, it'd be a nice feature that the fact it's not only creating a nice natural thing, but also benefit other development in the city.
Right.
And the second one, I'm.
Alan, wait, just to answer your first question, did you?
No, the only thing I'll say that is, we are working with our stormwater staff and they haven't flagged any particular opportunity to help with our compliance with our MS4 permit
Yeah.
on this project. But I think it's also noteworthy that the swale and rain garden facility would be maintained by Public Works Stormwater. So there is that component. So they are engaged. Park staff is not gonna go out and maintain, which is essentially a regional stormwater facility.
Getting double credit out of this.
Yeah.
And the other question I had in your interpretive center. The history of our intellectual disability facilities is dark at best. I'm just curious about what you might have in mind for how would we sort of memorialize it for the previous use of this facility and do it in a sensitive and cultural way that somehow didn't, I guess, justify what was done there. Because I'm lightly familiar with this facility, but most facilities I know of always had dark histories.
Right.
And dark concerns. So.
So we did speak with several former residents of the Fairview Training Center. And they are really interested in the project. They're really excited to see it become something new as a park. And some of them did express interest in being involved with a memorial or some sort of interpretive piece. And I think the point we're at right now is it seems like a really exciting opportunity in that there's no like set vision right now for what it could be. So I think your question brings up a really good point. It's that we're at this opportunity where we can start collaborating with them more potentially, those former residents, in terms of understanding how could that history be told and involve their voices. So obviously we've talked to them in terms of preparing this work, but I think moving forward, they would be incredible groups to involve in what that looks like. So I think we're not proposing any set thing, but we see that those groups being really important to bringing new ideas forward and allowing us to not speak for them.
And I'm gonna piggyback on that. So a couple things, as we get into the design of that space, we have more work to do with those community members. I think it's gonna be important to tell the story from multiple perspectives. I think that's gonna be a really important component. And the other thing, with the report that will be coming a little later this fall, there's gonna be some recommendations that kind of fall outside of the design. And one of those recommendations is that SPRAB revisit the name of this park. I just wanna let you know about that in advance. So that's something we've heard from the outreach we did today. And so that's something we'll work at in the future.
It's too bad because Fairview's a great name for a park.
Yeah,
But I appreciate the sensitivity of it, so.
I mean, yeah, the biggest tenet and kind of what we just carries through is that there's equity, that there's accessibility throughout, and it's transparent and it's easy, and it's easily to move, you can move through this space without any encumbrances or barriers, whatsoever. And that's kind of like, hopefully the biggest kind of tell in terms of, recognizing the history of this place and maybe some of the darker, natures of this place. Like the playground itself needs to be the most universally accessible play area, in Oregon, It needs to, not respond to people with physical and emotional disabilities, but people who are affected by the autism spectrum, anything that would, talk about, inclusivity needs to be incorporated into this park, because.
I do wanna, we're a little over, so I wanna make sure we get to some other questions here. Zachary, I see your hands up.
Hey, thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sometimes my computers. I have a couple questions. Thank you all for doing this. It's very detailed, awesome. I really love the universal design approach because I feel like Rob, there's plenty of grants out there in that area. After doing like some research on that, that's wonderful. And I've been wondering when something like this could be prolific in the area. So I appreciate that work and making it accessible. And what a perfect spot to do it into celebrating kind of the new cultural approach at this spot. But I do have one question to kind of piggyback off the tree question, which I know right now the Oregon white oak is really cherished to our community and across the Willamette Valley, including those conifers. But I just want to put that out there. I hope we're preserving as many of those as possible. It sounds like we are.
Yes.
That was kind of my first question. Is that kind of on the agenda? Is we're going to look at that and make sure those white oaks stick around?
Yeah, the white oaks, everyone that's still surviving out there, like I said, there's one unfortunately, or a couple that we lost recently in the last few years, but all the Oregon white oaks, there's a few smaller ones that are kind of located down in here, but there's some really big ones located in this area that we will preserve every, tree that's of any significance. And, ideally, luckily, they're all natives for the most part. There's a London plane tree that's a good sized tree that's by the amphitheater that we will protect, as well as a deodora cedar that's right there. Yeah, those trees will be protected as well. Those aren't natives, but they're still significant trees in the landscape.
I'll just add that there are a lot of baby trees on the property. And staff are having discussion about essentially replanting them to an area to create basically a tree nursery. Where they would be out of the way and we could then replant them one more time where they would permanently go with the development of the park.
Nice.
That's awesome to hear. That's cool, Rob. Thank you. And then I noticed I was back in 2016 looking at the original kind of plan, and it's changed quite a bit. I was wondering if you had any insight, and maybe it's just the gradient of the area and how the topography works out. But I noticed there's a not an actual soccer field on this plan anymore, which I totally understand why that could be, but I want to get that perspective. And then I realized that there's only one basketball court. And the area is it's growing a lot, and I think that area is going to continue to grow with the development around. I just wonder if there's any thought process behind why those were taken out of that master plan, other than, we just want to make this as universally accessible as possible and make it a more, leisurely recreation space. Did we have any kind of thoughts on that?
So with that, and then I'll pass it over to you. So I'm going to answer the first half of that. With the previous or the current master plan, a number of years ago, we did start design on what would have been a phase one of that plan, focused on that multi-use field. Because of the amount of grading required to make a not flat space flat, when we basically stopped design work on that was at 30% design, we received a cost estimate of over $4.5 million just to put in the one field.
Yeah.
And that's where that's kind of I was at this point where we just took a step back and said, wait a minute.
Good.
In addition to all the other reasons we talked about today, maybe we need to revisit this master plan. So this is probably just not a good site for extensive fields.
Well,
That's what I was thinking. That was kind of what I was thinking. Thank you, Rob.
yeah, the master plan showed not only a soccer field, but also showed potential expansion or footprint of either a softball field or a baseball field as well.
Right.
This just, the topography of this site and with the existing native vegetation, it just didn't make sense to put something that required that much flat area, on this site. If you zoom in on the green area that's on Lindbergh Road, that multigrass area, we have a rectangle drawn in that lawn. You can kind of see it. That's that's probably sized for like a U10 or a U11 soccer field, would fit within that area. So there can be some kind of informal, nothing for high school or any,
Right.
older kids, but like youth soccer, they could have a youth soccer game in that, on that field. And we would grade that relatively flat. So it would not have a lot of slope on it. So it would feel like a play area. And we're envisioning that both of those areas, the one on Lindbergh and the one on Strong, would be flat enough that you could play, pick up frisbee or pick up soccer or, lawn tennis or whatever. You could do all kinds of stuff in those relatively flat lawn areas.
No, thank you. That was gonna be my next question. Can youth soccer go out there and set up a goal? So thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we
And
can.
that's all my questions. Thank you, everyone.
You know, Elizabeth, do you want to quickly address baseball, basketball courts, just real quickly?
Yeah, and I don't, just reaffirming what we've already heard, and then just to add a tiny bit on to that, we were really paying attention closely to public involvement feedback, and across different demographics, we just did not see as much interest in soccer, basketball as other amenities. Like even with youth, they were really excited about more informal lawns and places to sit and relax. So we did see interest in basketball and fields, which is why we're including it, but we just really are trying to reflect what we're hearing from people. And did you say just basketball?
Yeah,
Or
I
yeah,
think
yeah, we
that's
covered
right.
it, yeah, they wanted, but not a lot.
I just had a brief comment. The word that comes to mind is thoughtful. This is really a very thoughtful plan. It's just the way you did it was great. I had a question because when I was out there, you could see the mountain views, like I think it was Mount Jefferson. Did you guys notice that when you were there? I was just wondering what perspective does anything feature that?
Well, if you're looking at, you'd probably be, I don't know if you can see it from the amphitheater. Probably the best view for Jefferson might be in these higher points looking back that way, because Jefferson is, to your left, or to your right.
I imagine you'll have the view when you walk down this path as well. I do think you, on a clear day, can see from the.
From the amphitheater.
Yeah.
And then a question I had is, did you have any? Okay. One of the things we've talked about is park access outside of cars, and so thinking about bike and bus access, and this has come up with other parks about how close, what's the proximity from some of the main entrances to existing Chariots bus stops, for example. Bike access, room for bike parking is one that I know is a layer down on park design, but as we think about lots of users, hopefully, is there gonna be space for things like that? Has that been considered so far?
I think we haven't called out, well, we're not in like the really nitty gritty
Yeah.
design piece, so we haven't called that out specifically, but it's definitely on our list of, not designing to conflict with that in the future. So there's space for that when the level of detail gets there. But
Yeah, I think there's gonna be some specific recommendations in the report, but I'm here every meeting, I hear what the discussion is.
Yeah.
And you'll see a little of that reflected in the report and its recommendations.
Okay.
And also Ray is in communications with Chariots, and keeping them aware of this project and having discussions about them. And, we can't speak for them, but we were saying, hey, how cool would it be if you could maybe change the bus route someday?
Is
And
there
so
currently any stop, where is?
the nearest line would be Fairview Industrial, which is kind of just off the screen here at the top. There's a bus route on it,
Okay.
with stops there.
So
So
yeah, probably a 10-minute walk? to the
yeah,
park?
it's probably less than a 10-minute walk. Yeah.
Which I know is kind of the gold standard that we try and go for, yeah. Okay, that's helpful. Any other questions or comments, members? I agree, this is really, really thoughtful. It's very exciting to see this go forward, and especially exciting to know that there's some money available, which I know is sometimes the challenge with master plans, is getting these really great ideas and then having them sit for a while. So knowing that some of this can initially get funded is really, really great.
I'm afraid it's not gonna be enough, that's fine.
Yes, well, hopefully getting some of it started can bring in more funding to keep it going. We'll need, so I guess, is there a motion to?
I'll make a motion. I'm really impressed with both the thoughtfulness of this plan. I think it's serving a lot of community interest. My only, I guess, if I could wish, would be more sporting facilities. I think that's an integral part of parks, but all in all, I'm very supportive of this, and I'd like to make a motion, we accept it as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to accept it. Do we have a second? Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. We'll just go through it. Zachary?
Let's do it.
All right. Alan?
Yes, sir.
Debbie?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. So,
I just want to clarify, I can take that as an endorsement of the plan and you forward it to city council?
correct.
Okay,
Yes, sorry.
awesome, thank you.
Endorsement of the plan and forwarded to city council. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for the really thoughtful presentation and the details you put into this. Very excited to go out there and see it as it continues to develop.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, as we move on, I want to quickly acknowledge that Councilor Barney has joined us during the presentation. I wanted to give you just a moment if there was any updates or anything you wanted to share with us, otherwise.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I did want to mention a couple of things. Just
Hello, everyone. I just came from the Solid Waste Committee meeting and we were discussing some of the challenges coming up. Covanta, it used to be Covanta, but it's called World Source, will be ceasing operations at the end of this year, December 31st. And so there's going to be a lot of solid waste to deal with. Probably the biggest problem is the medical waste. So that's gonna be kind of popping up. Jumping into, since we were talking about money, budget, public survey was done to determine, community, it was called the Salem Community Priorities Survey. And it was to determine, what services the community prioritizes and what sort of a funding mechanism they would support. The results from the survey will be brought to us at a council work session on the 21st.
Oh, so it's already done.
The survey started the 10th of September.
Okay.
And the results will be presented to council on October 21st. And then as a follow-up to that, we have a budget committee meeting on the 30th. We don't normally convene budget committee meetings until January. But because of the importance of this information and us starting to talk about reductions for the 25-26 fiscal year, the budget committee is getting together sooner. Okay, so those are all key items. I wanted to update you on what's happening regarding people who are unhoused in Wallace. I'm part of in Wallace Marine Park. I'm part of a work group that started, boy, when did that work group start? I'm trying to remember. At the beginning of the year, the last meeting we had was in March. And what we wanted to do was slowly reduce the amount of camping occurring in Wallace Marine Park. And the group, we had a plan laid out, and actually the individuals that are doing that are city employees, some of our police, a lot of outreach workers. And what they were doing, they started down at the boat ramp and then kind of had phases. And so they were connecting campers to services, basically slowly, just a slow methodical process, clearing certain areas. I don't mean that in a bad way or whatever, but as they did a survey of individuals all over, and the ones that left Wallace Marine Park did not relocate anywhere in the city or downtown or whatever, and a good portion of them are housed. Oh, also outreach from Salem Housing Authority is a big part of this too. Anyway, there are a lot of them that are getting into housing, and the actual transition process. It's really important that we have our micro shelters and the navigation center, because sometimes that transition from camping to actual housing is a very difficult transition. And so it's great that we still have funding for those transitional ones. So that has been occurring, and then the process kind of stopped as there were things where police were needed elsewhere, some of the other, there were just things that came up. And so we backtracked just a little bit, but now we've caught back up again, and so working our way upward, we've since regained that work in recent weeks, and the areas that might be described as visible from the softball and soccer fields remain without encampments. And so, as I said, it's a process. About 3 camps per week are being concluded, basically. And so I just wanted to provide an update on that. I received this update from Gretchen just a couple days ago. Anything else? At the council meeting Monday, we will be looking at a resolution to transfer $6 million from the equipment replacement fund to the EMS fund, the emergency medical services, because for any of you who don't know, we are transitioning and taking over running the ambulances out of our fire department. And we need to hire 60 people. And all this is gonna take place beginning July 1st, 2025.
I have a question for you. Do you have any updates on the boards and commissions consulting work that's been happening? I know this year there's been an effort underway and the boards and commission, what is it called? It's
The boards and commissions appointment
Appointments,
committee
Yeah,
or something like
yeah,
that.
something along those lines.
Um,
I know there was some recommendations and I was just curious if there's been anything public or where things are going and if there's anything that would have impacts on SPRAB we should know about.
Not yet.
Okay.
Moss Adams has been working on that along with looking at the charter and the council rules.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything that's come together quite yet.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect. If you hear
asking.
anything more, please pass it along
Sure.
out of curiosity, but well, thank you so
that's
much.
it. You're welcome.
I appreciate you being here. All right, well, we will move on, and I think next we're going into, I guess I should say, did anyone else have questions? Want to make sure. Okay. Move on next to capital improvement plan updates, and we have.
Okay, hello. So Tammy Stars, Public Works Engineering, and I'm the lead on the capital improvement program. As you remember, I was here a couple months ago, presented the our current capital improvement plan for the current fiscal year through 2029. So what I wanted to talk to you today, I'm not going to take a lot of time. Council policy C9, just wanted to, you can go to the next page. Thanks, Rob. Council policy C9 is what directs us to have a capital improvement plan and gives us direction on how we come about it. It was recently in July, council approved revising it. You want to go down a little bit? So I'm just going to go over a few of the revisions. It used to be that a project had to be at least $50,000 and have a useful life of 5 years or more. It has been increased just due to inflation and projects costing more money. It is now $100,000. So anything over $100,000 with a useful life of 5 years or more has to be in our capital improvement plan. We also added how it works now. We have review committees in each category. So parks, our 3 utilities, they're separate committees, transportation, urban development. We have committees made up of engineering, operations staff, planning staff that meet on a monthly basis. And we talk about new projects that are, coming in, maybe emergencies, infrastructure that needs fixed. We talk about citizens' requests that have been put in. We talk about them and then we score them during these processes throughout the year. And we've just started this last month. We've started those committee meetings once again. And with the policy C9, we also have included, because there was requests from council members to see the plan before it goes to budget committee. And so we now will be going on the 21st, I'll be going to the Council Finance Committee meeting, and I believe there's 4 or 5 council members on that. Councilor Varney's on that committee. I will be going to that at least 4 times, and we'll talk about the CIP development next week on the 21st. Then I'll be giving them at another meeting progress updates. They'll get in January preliminary 5-year CIP. And then they'll get the proposed 5-year CIP, a pre-final in February, and they'll see it before it goes to budget committee. And they'll provide, they'll get to review it. They'll get to give some direction on programming of funds to make sure that we're meeting council goals and objectives. And then as we go through this project, through the year, there'll be quarterly reports to council if there's mid-year projects or changes to our CIP. If we pull a project out of the CIP for whatever reason, let's just say we just don't need it Staff have decided that's just not a direction we're gonna go in. we pull one out or we have an emergency and we need to add one, it will be part of that quarterly report. Projects over $100,000 mid-year will still go to a council for approval. So we still have that process. So that's pretty much it on council policy C9. Then the other form I wanted to show you, this is on the city website. If you go to government, budget and finance and go to the capital improvement plan, you will find this project request form. So this form is on the city website. If there's something for the city infrastructure that you would like us to check into, it may be a project on your street or your park. There's a submit button there and it'll come directly to me and we will check it out. You may get a phone call for more information and then I will bring it to our committee meetings. So.
How many of those do you get?
Typically, not a lot.
Okay.
So typically about 3 to 4 a year.
Okay, good to know.
I'm shocked I don't get more. So.
And person wouldn't know how much this is gonna cost, so, I mean, whatever one wanted done.
You don't have to put a cost.
Right, but I mean, you would let the person know, well, we don't consider that, or maybe we could do it without putting it on the plan.
Typically, I'll get requests that might not even, yes, so if it was under 50,000 or under $100,000, I wouldn't just drop it off, say, nope, I can't help you, it's under 100,000.
Right.
I'm going to get you to a city staff member that can help you. So, it might be, you might call for, a street that's kind of sunken. Well, I may not be able to help you because it's not over $100,000, but I can get you to our streets people that can go take a look and it might just be a small repair.
Great, thank
you
you.
know.
100,000 doesn't go much into construction.
No, it doesn't. Funding wise, Parks has a lot of different funding sources. SDCs is one of our biggest. Just wanted to let you all know that SDCs are coming in pretty good this year.
Oh.
So, according to budget so far, cash in the door, which is cash, and that's what I like. I don't like, I want it to be true cash. We're about 2/3 received of what we budgeted in the first 3 months. So that's a very good sign. So. Any questions?
I have a question. I know Chair Norris has brought this up before, and this might be a question between the two of you, is just how closely, when you're sitting down reviewing this, thinking about master plans like the one we just approved or forwarded to council, I suppose, there's so many still in the docket that we need to do. I think about the one that Keith has brought up is Eagles View, which I think was 2019 approval, and there still has not really been much done there. So how closely does that get brought up in terms of these processes of looking at ones where we're not waiting so long? How close, how far back are we going to say this park needs to be addressed? I guess we'll start there.
Yeah, Scott and I have talked about this, we talked about this a lot. I'm trying to close the gap between a master plan and phase 1 implementation.
Yeah.
And so just like this year, I will not be putting any CIP project requests in this year. We're simply going to be, because of inflation, increasing costs of construction, I'm unfortunately pushing projects out, and I'm trying to prevent that from that trend from continuing forever.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be focusing on Eagles View, on Brown Road Park, on these neighborhood parks that we have master plans for that we haven't done anything with. And we are not going to be adding another master plan or another park development project to the list at this point.
I mean, not great that we need that, but I think it's a very fiscally sound way to approach it. Given these subcommittees you mentioned, is there a role? Is there something SPRAB should be doing more to be more active in this, whether it's a member of ours that tries to attend? Is there like a list of SPRAB recommendations and, parks we want to see, or do you feel like the conversations you're having are adequate to make sure that some of these parks that, maybe are 20 years old and master plans that we're redoing, that is there a way that we can be more involved in that, or is it not necessary at this time?
I think there's always a way for SPRAB to be more involved. I think today, there's continuity with Jen and I taking your discussions to the committee. But if SPRAB wanted to think about how they could get more involved, I think that's one of the reasons we're having this item today. Is the committee is meeting, we're discussing projects that SPRAB wanted get updates, let us know that that's part of the discussion item today. For example, I mentioned Eagles View and Brown Road, but what about Battle Creek?
Yeah,
Hey,
that was
Vice Chair,
what I
I know
was
you were
thinking too,
involved in
yeah.
that project, and you might be interested in what we're doing with that, and so if the SPRAD wanted to, we could come back maybe in December, and I could talk more specifically about the SDC projects and where that outlay of funds is, and where I think we're headed in the 5-year plan. Tammy,
I think that would be helpful, and I think maybe if we could make it as a part of the agenda item in December to think about it. Does that then turn into, a SPRAB request to council and to CIP committee of like, we want to see these prioritized, because exactly Battle Creek is one that came to my mind, as I remember going to those meetings in person quite a while ago, and there's a lot of potential with that park, but seeing how we can get that prioritized. Recognizing also what kind of budget situation the city is in, looking at how can we be strategic, but also just add a little bit of emphasis to make sure of that, so. I would love that. I think if that could be a December budget or a December meeting item, if that sounds good to other folks, to have that be an update to see kind of where the status of those are, and then maybe as kind of a potential step would be thinking about whether it's just more updates from SRAB, and I know we've talked about kind of a status of different master plans, and I think there's some of that exists already, but just having that information.
Bailey Ridge.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of parks.
Yes.
We have no shortage.
Bailey Ridge is a bit of a safety concern, so it is, as Member Miller, I know, it started design this year, and so we can talk about, where it is and how that affects the CIP as well, because it does.
I guess a continuity question, just thinking about Fairview is, so phase 1 is hopefully mostly getting started with funds that are committed or forecasted. So then as you're looking at the 5-year CIP, are phase 2, phase 3 being thought about as part of that already? Is that in the plan, or is that just kind of on the horizon of revisiting?
Phase 2 is been thought about. I don't know if it's in the plan or it's an issue. It might be an issue. It's an issue. Okay, it's an issue. It's not yet to the 5-year plan. Yeah.
And would that partially be because of just limited resources, or would that be that other parks like Eagles View, et cetera, might leapfrog because they've?
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
makes sense.
And so Sammy alluded to, we forecast a certain amount of SDCs being available,
Yeah.
and then we program to that, and then we have a sigh of relief right now because it's
Right.
looking like we guessed correctly, essentially, an educated guess, right?
Right.
And if we over-program, then what we'll do is we wouldn't be able to get through everything we put in our plan, so we don't want that either as well. So it's a balance. It is really a balancing act.
I have one more really technical question. Just keep going real quick, but you said you're not submitting more master planning processes as part of this current CIP, if I understand that
That's
correctly?
correct, yes.
Is master planning process money come from SDCs and other sources, in which case that frees up money that can go to actual build and implementation? Is that an accurate
That's
statement?
correct. So the SDC methodology allows us to purchase park property, master plan park property, develop park property with 100% SDD funds if it's one of the eligible SDC parks. So not every park in the city is eligible for SDCs, but if it is, we can do
That's great.
all those things with SDCs.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? I see Zach went off camera, so we'll. Okay, any questions on your end? All right. You're fine to go off camera. I just want to make sure you didn't have any questions there. All right, well, thank you so much. It sounds like we might revisit some of this in December, and I know Chair Norris has some questions as well, so that'll be a good chance. Yeah, perfect. All right, next, delayed start to the comprehensive park system master plan update.
Yeah, I don't mean to take a lot of time with this item, but I did present to the board about a year ago about how wonderful we're finally starting the update to the park system plan. And I'm here today just to give you an update of where we are. Unfortunately, we've made the decision at the staff level to delay that start. Ray and I hope to write an RFP for a consultant to help us starting in the new year. And by spring, we hope to start the project. But I wanted to keep you aware of the fact that the project has been delayed, and the reason is simply that Ray and I are the entire park planning team, and the safety and livability bond has been a wonderful thing, absolutely wonderful. The the funding that it brought to our park system is, I think, unprecedented in terms of investment into our parks. And it has given Ray and I lots of wonderful projects to work on. We're just busy. We're just really busy. In your packet, I have a little tracking sheet where you can see all the work that's happening from the bond work. And if you look at that critically, you'll see that there's a lot of work up front in the 10-year plan. That's intentional. We want to show the community the investments that they voted for. And a lot of that is in the parks. So we have Gear Park, we have Fairview Park with the dog park, we have improvements at McKay Park, we have the playground improvements, we have the parking lots of Minto, we have 5 sport court rehabs. So we just have a lot going on, and it's going to slow down here pretty soon. I think Ray and I's involvement is really kind of getting these projects going, and then at some point engineering kind of takes over the management and delivery of them. So I think the crunch moment is now, and we're almost seeing the light of day, and we'll be able to pick up soon. So I just wanted to keep you updated on what's happening there.
Perfect. Any questions from the board? Okay. We'll move into board member updates. I want to start by saying it's National Walk to a Park Day. So hopefully everyone was able to get out to a park today and walk, the goal being 10 minutes. The city has, and I see we have Kathy here. The city has created some really great little PDFs where you can figure out where a park is near you. And so they have it based on neighborhood. Really exciting. If you haven't checked that out or shared it with your own networks, please do. Really neat to have different resources for folks to be able to see. I live here, here's a park within 10 minutes of me. Last year we made a proclamation. There's the national effort led by Trust for Public Lands and 10-minute walk cities. There's a lot of different converging conversations to really make sure you have outdoor access. And I was really excited. The communications team put together a great campaign this year, Walk to Salem Parks, to really highlight and that park access. I know Alan and Debbie will submitted videos and photos, so thank you for that. I also saw some counselors and others did that as well. And so Kathy, I'm hoping you can share a few updates for us about that, and maybe we can make this an annual thing that continues to go well.
Yeah, I think that's the goal. I think we've had some pretty good response. The thing that I really liked, and let me just share my screen for a moment. Quickly.
I'm making you a co-host right now.
Okay, thank you. There we go. There's the start. Wow, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm never sure what you can see. So, especially on Zoom. So this is our kind of our day of social media post, just highlighting the maps to parks and encouraging people to go out this afternoon and take a walk and find their nearest park or a new park or something like that. So we've had some good sharing response, which was nice. Several of the neighborhoods shared their own neighborhood maps. We had the city council forum shared, let's discuss Salem, and I'm trying to find some more, but so you get the Edgewater partnership and scan, you get the idea. It was great to have the participation of the board members and the counselors. I'd really like to see us expand that and give it a little more time to gestate the next time. We've been talking about next year and doing a more of an event-based thing, but we're also going to have these new assets that people seem to like, and they can be put on people's phones and used in that way. So they're a mobile tool, which is always good because people use their phones probably more than anything else these days. We got some good attention. Debbie's post with all her great photos was very strong, especially at the beginning of the event. We also posted, finally got Dylan's video post up on Instagram today, and it's just starting to get some attention now. Ideally, I'd like to see this campaign continue through the month and just see if we get more people uh, paying attention and taking advantage of this, the new resources we have. We also now have new, we're putting videos on each of the Find a Park pages, which is nice because you can get a better sort of a global view, and we're taking those 90 parks in 90 days videos and using and repurposing them for that purpose. So that's kind of a long process, but all the parks that were referenced in these social media posts now have videos up on their pages, so people can reference those now. We're also putting photos on every page too, so it's a process, and eventually it's going to be an ongoing process so that we can add history, maybe some history, some highlights, some more interactive content on our web pages for our parks. And we're also planning on doing a new brochure for the parks, the first one since 2015. So I think we pretty much doubled our parks in the last 15 years, or in the last 10 years. So it'll be quite a project.
Incredible. Thank you, Kathy. And just really want to underscore the video on the websites. I mean, this is something I know you all talked about in the past, and how do we get the website to be more user-friendly for the public, to not, some park pages didn't even show the right park photo at one point. And so the comms team has done a really good job, both getting photos updated, but also having videos and different assets on there to help the public kind of engage with their parks nearby. So it's been really exciting, and I think makes all of our jobs easier to highlight that for folks. So the more we can share that out on days like today, the better. So appreciate Kathy and her team pulled this together in 2 weeks or so of this campaign. And so excited for having a year's notice next time, and hopefully making this a nice, easy engagement thing where we can all make sure everyone has a video down here.
Can I just real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to take a moment to thank Chair McDowell and Member Alexander for helping us plan this at the last minute. I appreciate your time you gave us to brainstorm and for submitting your video. That was a big hit. I know my wife saw it, and a lot of people have seen it, told me how wonderful it is. So I appreciate both of you.
Absolutely, happy to help. Perfect. All right, Kathy, thank you so much. Appreciate your work. Well, you're welcome to stick around, but also want to make sure I know you have a lot going on, so.
Yeah, I have a few things I have to get back to, so.
All right,
Thank you. for your
thank you.
time. Bye.
Any other board member updates folks would like to share? All right, hearing none, we'll go into information reports. Yes,
Do you,
did you want me to do that in new business, or do you want me to do it now?
just, can we get now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to. We have, so our wonderful Becky is moving on into a new role and is retiring from her current position. And so we want to take a minute to say thank you to Becky and all the work that she's done. I have been on SPRAP almost 6 years now. I'm almost kicked off in that sense, but I'm city role. And it's just been amazing to see how much you've done to keep the recreation side going, because this has not been an easy 6 years. And I look at, started on, and there was big dreams of everything, and then the pandemic hit in 2020. And I think that the whole country was wrestling with how do we keep programming alive? How do we make sure there's access and opportunities? How do we think about equity as part of this? And I feel like you've really been at the forefront of that to make sure it continues. And so not only have things continued, but they've expanded dramatically. Things like Ironman coming to Salem. They were always showing up at SPRAB, and I really appreciate that engagement. And the team that you've led with things like the softball program. It's always a very positive way to end the meetings. Everyone's very passionate about it. It really brings a lot of heart to the meeting and really kind of helps us to really see the impact it's having on the community. So I wanted you to offer a huge sense of gratitude for how much work you've done and how much we're going to miss you. And I want to open it up if anyone else wants to say anything, and then we'll turn it over to Kathleen.
Yes, thank you. Lots of
It's been a
things
pleasure.
going on.
Yes, it's been really nice hearing from you and making me realize how busy the parks are and how many activities are going on. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
And from past histories, I appreciate how much work it takes to get these events scheduled, and how much revenue for the city these events can generate, both in the way of visitors as well as the money those visitors spend when they're here on the softball tournaments, the baseball tournaments, whatever sport it is. But I know how much background work it takes, and I thank you again. at your replacement is gonna have a lot of work to do.
Well, you'll be in very good hands.
Yes, speaking of which, this is a good time, Kathleen, if you want to quickly introduce yourself and then share.
Yeah, I'm Kathleen Swarm. I'm acting in capacity and that's just what it is. I'm simply an actor because these shoes will never be able to be filled. So I'm acting in capacity as recreation manager. And I'm just here to give a little something to Becky as a thank you and something you can take as a reminder of all of the work that you have done. Because a lot of what I will get to enjoy would not have been possible without all you have done. So this is a photo of an aerial shot of the Ironman event. So it features a bridge that has came to be since Becky has been with the city, an amphitheater, and now this incredible event. I like to think of recreation as all of the fun that happens in the places, that is the parks. So without people to enjoy these beautiful spaces that we work so hard to preserve, you know.
Well done.
It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed every minute of it and I get to work with and alongside amazing people and you as board members and chairs of counselors. It's just, we can't do what we do without your support. So thank you, everybody. It's been a lot of fun and I'm not going anywhere. So I'll probably be one of the little dots in that picture in the future. So thank you all very
See you
much.
there.
This is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Becky.
All right, with that, we will move into our information reports. They're written, and so I know Rob has one update to share verbally, and then we'll open up the floor if folks have any other questions about items listed in the reports. But Rob, over
Thank
to
you. Just a quick update about the Minto Brown Island Park parking lot paving project. Today or yesterday, the contractor took down the construction fencing around the parking lot. Paving is complete. All the components have been installed. The project is, as I speak, reaching what we call substantial completion. And I do expect the parking lot to be open to the public tomorrow, but certainly in time for the weekend. So if it's gonna be some pretty nice weather, if you wanna visit Minto this weekend, you can expect parking lot 3 to be open. We're going to immediately close the overflow lot, which has been serving as the primary parking for that portion of the park. And as the rainy season comes, it needs some time to rest. So you'll see us doing some moving around real quick, and then we'll be planting trees and doing some final touches as we move into the fall here. And we are planning an event to kind of celebrate that project as well as look to the next construction season in the spring as well. So that's something to look forward to.
Any questions about that or other items in the written reports? All right, hearing none, we'll move into new business. 2 items to bring up. One is there is a new ethics rule in the state that boards and commissioners have to take, board members and commissions have to take a webinar version of an ethics training mandated by the state. So Rob is gonna follow up with all of us in an email on that. So be on the lookout. It's like a 1-hour training or something like that will be coming our way. So just something to be aware of. You will in fact have to do that one. So be aware there. And then second is our next meeting, we are gonna have later this month, October 18th, is a park tour. We've talked a lot about trying to get out in these parks more and see these spaces. So I'm really excited about that. And Rob, I don't know if you want to share any logistical information, but I think the biggest thing is if you cannot go, make sure to tell Rob so we can plan accordingly.
Yes, that would be much appreciated. Yes, and we are planning to leave here, and so you can plan to come and park at the building and meet in the lobby. Where we'll have at least one of the passenger vans that Park and Rec has available so we can all drive around. This will be a public meeting, so I will remind you at the event, but while we're in the van together, please do not talk about substantive items. You can certainly, talk about the weather, that's fine. And then we will have, we're gonna try to follow itinerary, so members of the public could follow us and meet us at each location. And so it won't be a hybrid meeting, it will be in person only, but it still will be a public meeting.
Any other new business items that folks would like to raise? All right, hearing none. This meeting is adjourned and our next meeting will be October 18th for the tour. Thank you all so much. Congratulations on the wonderful team for this great Fairview Park. And look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Zachary.